Good. All right. And this presentation was put together with my colleagues. So I am a mycologist by training. I study mostly fungal diseases, which are our primary disease issues that we see in turfgrass. Dr. Jane Polston, now retired, helped me to put this together, and I continue to rely on colleagues and collaboration, a very collaborative project with our turfgrass breeding program with virologists to help to understand why this is happening, what is causing it, and what we can do about it. And so that's what we're going to cover today. And if we have questions, I think we'll probably hold those to the end. And then I'd be happy to stick around for an extended question and answer period, anything that I don't address with the slides here. But what we're going to talk about is an overview of mosaic disease, which is a viral disease of turfgrass affecting turf in South Florida today, including in the Gateway communities. We're going to talk about the history of that disease and then the development of a second, more troublesome disease called lethal viral necrosis caused by the same virus, Sugarcane Mosaic Virus. We'll talk about the history of that, the research that we've conducted to get to the point we are today and our understanding of what's happening and why, and then what are our future plans for additional strategies to deal with this once it comes into a community. We'll talk about today's best management steps for preventing and slowing the spread of this disease, what it does to turfgrass when it comes into a community based on our observations from the hundreds of communities within South Florida that have been affected since 2013. We'll talk about sourcing LVN or lethal viral necrosis resistant varieties, why that's a little bit trickier than it might sound, and how we have been recommending folks go about doing that. And then when and where to install. And I'll try to cover some frequently asked questions that come up as far as when we install new grass and how that's done to most efficiently deal with this problem and hopefully prevent this from having to replace sod multiple times to deal with this particular disease problem. So the background, the basics. Viruses are pathogens. They affect people. We all have been way too familiar with COVID-19. Viruses also, of course, can affect plants and animals. Plants get viral diseases. They cause a wide range of symptoms. Not every plant reacts the same way to every virus or even the same virus. And so these symptoms that we're going to describe today, we can kind of think about them if we put them into human terms as a varying degrees of severity of disease caused in different grasses by the same virus that are causing either mosaic or lethal viral necrosis. And viral diseases, as we know from humans and from plants, both are difficult to control because we don't have very many or very good antiviral drugs. In fact, we have none for turfgrass and for plants in general. And so we don't have the same control measures we can use for fungal disease to deal with viral disease. So that makes it difficult for us as compared to fungal disease to deal with this problem and to stop it in its tracks. It continues to spread and cause problems for us where it's introduced. And we'll talk about the rate of that spread and other information moving forward. So the virus is not new. It's not a brand new thing to Florida or to turfgrass. In fact, as far as the 1960s, this virus was known to infect St. Augustine grass. And it really didn't cause us much of a problem. It was there. We recognized it as plant pathologists in our community as being a disease causer. The disease that it caused, the Sugarcane Mosaic Virus, was called mosaic. And that virus disease was very mild. It didn't cause lawns to die. It was like that until 2013. In 2013, mosaic disease again reemerged and this time developed a more severe symptom in the fall, cooler temperature period of the year, 2013, 14, and now to this day, the more severe symptoms that occur, we'll show pictures of it, result not just in a yellowing that's very faint and difficult to detect, but in death of turfgrass, thinning of turfgrass to the point where lawns become unsightly. They become necessary to replace those lawns with new sod. And so these are new symptoms that developed since 2013 with a new strain of this virus that we've been dealing with for a number of years. And this new disease, this more severe onset of symptoms in the fall of the year on the variety Floratam of our St. Augustine grass is called lethal viral necrosis. If we pause for just a moment and think about viral diseases, this can be confusing when we think about sugarcane mosaic virus. How can it cause two different diseases in our lawns on the same grass, St. Augustine grass? One analogy that I've been using to try to understand this is the chickenpox virus. Varicella virus is the virus that causes both the disease chickenpox. It also causes the disease shingles. Folks who have shingles have already had chickenpox. The same virus causes two very different diseases at different times in the life of people. This sugarcane mosaic virus causes mosaic, like chickenpox, in people. It causes mosaic in Floratam and other varieties of St. Augustine grass. Only the Floratam variety, under certain stresses, develops the shingles portion of this, the life-threatening, more complicating disease caused by the same virus, which is LVN. So where we have one virus, we have two diseases that occur in succession and on the same grass. The LVN is much more concerning for us. It's what we're going to spend most of the day talking about today. It kills turfgrass. It follows mosaic symptoms. And so it's a little bit complicated, but hopefully by the time we get to the end of this presentation, we'll have an understanding of one virus causing a mild symptom first, sometimes developing into a severe symptom called lethal viral necrosis on certain varieties of St. Augustine grass, namely Floratam, the grass that most of us, 80% of us, have in our lawns, which can succumb to this virus and which then requires replacement in many cases. So one virus, two diseases, one much more severe. What do these diseases look like? If you haven't experienced them firsthand in your community yet, the mosaic disease can be difficult to find. In the summer portion of the year, in fact, it's very difficult to find these yellow streaky blades that are in the picture on the screen here. The yellow streaky blades are mosaic disease, symptoms of mosaic disease. This indicates that this plant is infected with sugarcane mosaic virus. In varieties other than Floratam, this is as severe as mosaic gets. We can easily overlook it. We can manage a lawn and not be concerned about it, as has been the case since the 1960s. The problem arises when, in cool temperatures, this disease progresses into the second disease that we're talking about today, lethal viral necrosis. These are mosaic symptoms on a resistant variety. This variety does not develop lethal viral necrosis. There's some fungal disease that can look close, that can look similar to the viral diseases. Here, the yellow streaky broken lines are what we're focusing on in this picture. This is mosaic, again, of a resistant variety that does not develop LVN. The yellow lines and streakiness on blades of grass can be indicative of many different things, including nutrient deficiency. If we don't fertilize our yards, they can turn yellow, right? The difference between this mosaic and the picture here and nutrient deficiency is that nutrient deficiency tends to be more like candy stripes that run the entire length of the leaf blade. They're uniform, they're not broken and mosaic in their pattern. So this is the disease. Other things can cause yellowing like wet feet, root rots, and nutrient deficiencies. This is the viral disease that is required to have the virus infect the turf and then develop within that turf plant. This is a palmetto turfgrass lawn in Pinellas County that has mosaic. This has sugarcane mosaic virus, but this was the solution in 2014 for this lethal viral necrosis problem. So this lawn still has the virus. It's a resistant variety. This homeowner was very happy with the palmetto lawn that was installed because for the previous 2 years, Floratam had died in this exact same lawn because Floratam develops the severe disease, lethal viral necrosis, and palmetto does not. So the virus is present in our community and our environment. We can't get rid of it. We haven't been able to eradicate the virus. It's present. We deal with it by, when the turf starts to look poor, moving away from turf that's susceptible to lethal viral necrosis and putting in turf that develops only mosaic and still gives us a nice green lawn that's acceptable for the homeowner, for the community standards, and for the folks that are managing this lawn. Now, the lethal viral necrosis is a different story. The Floratam variety doesn't just stay at that previous picture with the yellow streaky leaf blades. It develops brown blighting of the turf. You'll see in this picture here, the newest blade, the second newest blades have a similar pattern of discoloration, but that discoloration has now moved from yellow into brown and necrosis. Necrosis means death of the turf plant. So this is more concerning. One, it looks a little bit more obvious when we're looking at a turf lawn. This symptom also develops and spreads more uniformly through the Floratam lawns as the years progress. Year 1, 2, and 3, it becomes more higher in its incidence, meaning more of the grass will show this symptom, and more of the grass after that first cool evening temperature period in about November will die and thin and result in a lawn that looks unthrifty, that looks poor, and that is not competitive with weeds. So we get weed pressure that will come in, and we'll see crabgrass and other weeds growing where we would expect to see a nice, healthy, vigorous lawn. Again, where we're making these efforts to put these resources into this lawn, it does not thrive because of this viral disease, lethal viral necrosis. Here is a picture sort of in the transition after the cool evening temperatures in the November timeframe. The yellow leaf blade streaking turns brown. This goes systemic through the plants, means it moves from one shoot to the next through the stems and underground structures of the St. Augustine grass plant. And each of those plants that are infected with this virus will become symptomatic, die, and again, thin the turf canopy to allow for weeds. Here is the disease as it progresses. We see the lawn become more golden bronze colored. We'll see the individual turf shoots pictured here start to die in the oldest leaves. Sometimes the newest leaves will hold on a little longer, other times not. And this bronzing to brown discoloration looks similar to fungal disease. The big difference, of course, is that fungal disease can respond to fungicides. We have good management recommendations we can make. In this case, pictured here, a viral disease will not respond to those fungicides. So it's important for us to know if what we're seeing is disease caused by the virus or fungal disease, which can look very similar, because we have different tools that we can deal with these different disease problems, namely fungicides for fungal disease, replacing the turf once it gets to a certain point when it has the viral disease. As we show another picture here of how bad it gets, the turf essentially dies. So the turf in the next picture, I believe, will die. We'll see lesions on the leaf blades. We'll have, in the worst case, after 3 years of incidence in a lawn, about 97 to 98% of the turf will become affected and will die, leaving us with a lot of dead gray turf grass, a lot of weeds coming in, and then about 3% either sick or escape plants that don't show symptoms because they weren't infected from survive in the 1 to 3% range, but not serve as a good quality turf for us. Weeds will come in again, and so we're stuck with a poor looking lawn through the winter months when we really want to enjoy our lawns. Here's a lawn with lethal viral necrosis. You'll notice a lot of weeds. Here, the green part is mostly Bermuda grass. Bermuda grass is a weed for our lawns, and it also serves as a reservoir for this virus. The virus can infect other grasses, including weedy grasses, and is able to hang out there in the soil and on this weedy grass until the Floratam starts to recover a little bit in the summer, and then until the fall when it moves into some of those escaped plants, spreads further from this lawn to other portions of the lawn and then the neighbors' lawns. And we'll talk about how that happens and how to slow it as we get into the presentation. So early on in the discovery that this was a viral disease, samples were sent to the diagnostic lab with the report from the turf professionals. This disease, whatever it is not responding to fungicides. And the reason was it was very specific to a particular variety of turf grass, and it was caused by the virus. So this is lethal viral necrosis on Floratam. This is a lawn in Pinellas County where a non-Floratam variety was used for a portion of the lawn. This part of the grass looks okay, but it has the virus. This has Mosaic. This is Floratam that's developed lethal viral necrosis. And you'll see that it's spread into the neighboring properties as well. This clued us in that with a very host-specific response, this was virus. We did the tests and found that that virus was Sugarcane Mosaic Virus, which is a podavirus in that group. It's one, again, that we had seen before, but not causing this particular level of severity or this bad of a disease on our Floratam. Floratam makes up about 80% of the lawns in Florida, so it's very common. It's very good. It's a very good St. Augustine grass because it's vigorous, it's tough. This is one of its weaknesses that has emerged. This is lethal viral necrosis that's occurring on sod that was replaced. The sod died. It was replaced with Floratam, and the virus came back onto the sod that was placed here. The sod was healthy when it was placed. It came back much more quickly after the sod was replaced with Floratam and died a second year. This is one of the reasons why we're saying don't use Floratam to replace sod that has died from the virus. This is why it's important for us to know if the grass died from virus or not, because if it did not, and if virus is not in your community, Floratam is an option for us to consider. If it did, Floratam will die. From our observations of the many, many communities where this has been attempted, it will die if we try to replace that sod with Floratam again. So there are other options that we consider, but 80% is Floratam, meaning only 20% is available that are other grasses. So they're not particularly common or popular. We have to seek them out and make sure that what we get is in fact not Floratam. Talk about that as we move forward there. Those are some pictures very briefly of what the disease looks like and the symptoms that it causes. The bottom line is that it causes the turf to thin, turn a bronze golden color, and ultimately die in the lawns that are most severely affected. Not all lawns show the symptoms along the same time frame. These are generalizations and have followed a pretty consistent pattern in that within the first 3 years, disease is fairly slow to spread. Symptoms are mild. By the third year, generally, we have enough of disease outcome there that the homeowner and the community are not happy with how the turf looks. So as a kind of a review here, mosaic and lethal viral necrosis are two different things. Mosaic occurs on all St. Augustine grass varieties. Floratam develops lethal viral necrosis. Mosaic develops into lethal viral necrosis on Floratam during the winter months, starting in about November. Prior to the winter months, the Floratam might recover some. In the first years, it may recover more than the later years of after infection and introduction of the virus. But other varieties do not develop LVN other virus. So they maintain the mild mosaic symptoms that we really don't care about because they don't cause heartache over our lawns in the way they look. Both of these diseases are caused by the Sugarcane Mosaic Virus. As the name indicates, it also infects other grasses, including sugarcane. Where we're concerned, of course, is in our St. Augustine grass. It affects weedy grasses like Bermuda grass, like crabgrass, but does not kill those grasses, unfortunately. It has a sporadic distribution among the counties that are affected. I'll show a map here of where this disease has been confirmed. It's most of South Florida that's highlighted, but it's not every community within South Florida. Even within Gateway, this has been a relatively recent introduction. Not all communities have this problem and may not develop the problem. We don't understand fully why some communities are skipped. We know how this virus is spread. We'll talk about those mechanisms, but it has in Palm Beach County, kind of ground zero for introduction and spread of this, has taken some communities 10 years to develop the disease, where others developed it within the first couple of years. So like any disease, the prediction of the spread and the exact movement of where and when it will occur is difficult to predict. I'm going to share with you the last 10 or so years of observations of what has happened in other communities and groups of communities in hopes that we can predict and have some effect on what will happen in Gateway as this occurs. We have done the research to be able to make these claims and to present this data that I'm not going to focus on today. I have a day-long seminar that we give. I would encourage you to search that on YouTube if you're interested in seeing that data and that research specifically as to how we know it's Sugarcane Mosaic Virus, how we know that temperature is the trigger, why we know that Floratam is the particular variety that dies from this and not others. We've done inoculations, we've done metagenomics from the most basic research down to applied research to base these recommendations that I'm presenting today. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through those individual data. Again, if you have questions, I'm happy to answer those at the end of the presentation, specifically about the research we're doing or we have planned. And I'd encourage you to go back and look at that day-long seminar on YouTube. If you type Harmon, LVN, UF, it will pop up. And that was done in conjunction with Miami-Dade County, as well as Palm Beach County Extension. Okay, moving on. What is the distribution of lethal viral necrosis? As I mentioned, Pinellas County was one of the first counties where we saw this disease. South St. Petersburg was where it occurred in some very high-end neighborhoods with very well manicured lawns, excellent turf quality throughout. That's where the disease occurred first. And then later the next year, 2014, we saw the same in Palm Beach County. The two incidences could not be connected epidemiologically. We think that this virus strain has come about possibly in the ornamental plant trade, but we don't know where it exactly came from or how the initial introductions occurred. Looking back, that's difficult to determine and may not ultimately affect our outcome so much for us today. So we know that it occurred back in 2013 and 14 in those counties, and it spread out from there fairly slowly and sporadically. Within Palm Beach County, it spread then up north through the coastal areas, south through the Keys, and then as of last year, it has been found in Fort Myers area. In your communities, it continues to spread. Within Pinellas County, it spread much more slowly, and we think there's probably going to be a northern limit to where this virus will become extremely problematic, like it is in South Florida. We're still doing that research and making those observations. We did find it in St. Johns County in Ponte Vedra, up near Jacksonville, this last year. This was concerning, and we're trying to figure out where it came from and what we can do to try to prevent spread. Again, in high-end communities where we have excellent lawns, primarily of Floratam, very well maintained, is where we're seeing these communities being most affected, the lawns becoming severely blighted and then having to be replaced. So as far as the spread of the virus, the rate of spread, as I kind of mentioned, varies by scale, whether we're talking community to community, lawn to lawn, or county to county. And so county to county has been relatively slow. As I described, it just recently, after 10 years, reached Fort Myers and your county. It's erratic. Not all communities side by side have become infected in succession. And from lawn to lawn, the spread is much more consistent. And we know that this virus is spread on mowers. It's spread on lawnmowers, whether it's the homeowner that does the mowing, a company, or anyone else. And it's spread in moist plant sap. We'll talk specifically about how that works and how to prevent it. The short answer is it's difficult for us to prevent spread from lawn to lawn because we have to mow grass to maintain it. Mowing that, no matter who does it, has the potential to spread the virus. These longer distance movements, which are more sporadic, more difficult to predict, are not occurring on mowers. They're occurring by insect pest called an aphid that are not frequent feeders on St. Augustine grass, but they do feed. They get airborne and fly, and then they're distributed into the center, in some cases, of communities where they start the initial epidemic and the infection. So it's impossible for us to control aphids 100% and prevent introduction to the communities. Once it's introduced, it's been so far impossible for us to prevent spread within the communities. We can slow that spread, and we'll talk about how we do that by understanding how the virus moves in the moist plant sap and on the mowers. The types of lawns absolutely that are affected are high quality monocultures of Floratam St. Augustine grass. These are our best looking lawns in the state of Florida. They're also those that are hit the hardest with this virus disease when it comes in. There are other stresses besides low temperature exposure that can cause the virus to go from mosaic into the lethal viral necrosis stage of the disease or progress into that lethal disease. And those stresses have been observed to be drought stress, chemical stress, herbicides specifically. But primarily what we see is a year in, year out, each year in the fall of the year when the evening temperatures drop below about 65 degrees Fahrenheit. That's when we see grass start to bronze, start to thin, and that continues to progress and become worse into the killing stage of the disease through about the March timeframe, when grass will start to recover slightly. Weeds will come in and fill those empty spaces within our lawns, and then again start the process over through the summer with recovery, and in the fall, development of lethal symptoms. So a lot of questions that I get from folks who are dealing with this is, what's going to happen in my community? How is this going to progress through? I have a couple neighbors with this disease. When's it going to kill my lawn, or is it going to kill my lawn? And Yogi Berra has some good ones. One of them that I like is, it's tough to make predictions, especially about the future. All right. And disease is a biotic biology type of interaction. And we can't say with certainty. We can say with some confidence based on our observations and our knowledge of the biology of this disease, but can't say for sure how it's going to move through communities. We can educate ourselves on how it has moved through the hundreds of other communities we've been dealing with, and then make some pretty good guesses. And to do that, we need to know about the biology of viruses. They have to multiply inside diseased plants. Fungi can grow and proliferate outside of a plant. A virus has to have a living plant host to survive in and to multiply itself in using that plant machinery. So outside the plant, this virus dies fairly quickly. Viruses are on a range of very delicate to very tough. This one falls somewhere near the delicate side. Once moist plant sap is exposed from a mower, it has a limited amount of time where the virus is viable, and it can spread and move into new lawns and new grass areas within a lawn. And it has to get inside that new plant to be spread. One of the ways that we've seen this spread efficiently is when the tires get moist plant sap of a mower, get moist plant sap on them, and then grind that sap into new areas by moving across large areas of turf. And so once the sap dries on equipment, it does not remain viable, and that virus does not spread to a new community. So one of the things that we've been watching is, where does this virus come into new communities? Does it always come in where we unload the machinery, when we have one or two companies mowing large sections? If it came in on machinery, it would start where it's unloaded, and it would progress with a distribution that would mirror that frequency of unloading the machinery and starting where we'd expect the most virus to be. And it doesn't occur that way. It occurs such that we've seen communities in the backyards near the lake, isolated area, be the first area to develop this disease. And that's consistent with and why we say aphids are the most important vectors for us, moving community to community. Once it's established, then it moves from plant to plant and lawn to lawn via mowers very efficiently. This virus doesn't affect palms or ornamental plants outside of a few grasses. It doesn't affect pets or people or wildlife. We can be thankful for that it doesn't pose any kind of health hazard for us there. It only kills some grasses, and it only really kills Floratam so far. And so that's good to keep in mind. It can be scary to think about a virus moving through our lawns for some folks, but the good thing is it only affects the lawns. We have some things we can do to prevent it and then to deal with it when it does occur. Because we know moist plant sap from normal mowing spreads the virus, when the plants are cut open, the virus comes out in the sap is ground into new plants. We can try to avoid that by mowing diseased areas first and then moving those mowers into healthy areas next. So part of the plan that many communities have enacted is to scout, means to look around the community, identify lawns that have the virus, whether they're developing mosaic or lethal viral necrosis, flag those and ask our maintenance folks to mow those areas last. We also don't want to bring the virus in on equipment. And so equipment, as I mentioned, is not an efficient mover of the virus. It can happen if we move wet plant sap on our equipment. So the recommendation, and what most folks are doing, is to allow plenty of time for that plant sap and those clippings to dry out on equipment between communities, between pods, between sections, between accounts from the company that's doing the mowing. In some cases, new equipment has been purchased and only used in particular communities. In other cases, sanitizers have been used on the equipment as an extra added layer of protection from the possibility of spreading this virus, again, introducing it into the communities. Once it's in the community, we have initially in Palm Beach County done some trials and some observational research where we've tried to set up sanitizing stations every few lawns, and essentially did not slow the spread of the virus within these communities once it's established. We didn't see virus movement on the equipment in the real world. When we monitored that, we did see it go ahead and spread to new pods in some of those Valencia communities in Palm Beach County. Anyway, when we were doing this. So it can move again on that insect pest. We can do some things to slow the spread. It has not so far stopped the spread within communities when it's established. Those sanitizers, as I mentioned, do an excellent job of killing virus, and this virus is not particularly resilient or recalcitrant towards sanitizer use. So household bleach, commercial sanitizers that we purchase like Green Shield, Pine Sol, Physan, Lysol are all good examples of products that kill viruses. Some of those are corrosive to our equipment. Again, it is just as effective to use the sanitizer as it is to allow the moist plant sap to dry. So an overnight period, removing clippings from equipment before moving to the next account, before loading it on the trailer, is the best management practice for us here. Sanitizers have been used again as an extra added layer, and it has been shown that either allowing it to dry or using the sanitizers or both have prevented movement on that equipment. Equipment is not the main way this is introduced into a community. It is the main way that it is spread within that community, within lawn to lawn, and around the lawn. There are a lot of questions about whether this can be spread with soil or is it spread airborne or by irrigation water. It does not spread in irrigation water. It cannot be spread in soil. It has to be associated with a plant host. Is it airborne? Only in the fact that aphids can fly. And so the aphids are not very good, as I mentioned, at spreading this virus, but they can spread it infrequently and not very efficiently. When that occurs, we see it pop into new communities. I get questions about whether clippings should be removed. If we know we have the virus, should we remove the clippings from the lawn and remove them off-site and mulch them or destroy them? And no, the IFAS recommendations are to return clippings to lawns for the organic matter and allow them to break down naturally. Same thing applies here, whether the lawn is virus affected or not. We do want to remove clippings from equipment between lawns, in particular between sections of communities and sections of lawns that have the virus versus that don't. And a leaf blower type situation is fine to get rid of those, encourage those to dry out. And again, allowing an overnight period when moving from a community that has the virus to one that does not have the virus has been shown to be effective strategy for preventing introduction into that new community. So we can slow the spread. We can not stop the spread once it's once it's discovered in communities. What do we do about it then? If we have the virus, we have LVN killing our lawns. The most important thing is do not regrass with Floratam. Floratam is an excellent grass anywhere we don't have LVN. Where we have Sugarcane Mosaic Virus, don't use Floratam because it will die that second and third time. That's an easy thing to say, but unfortunately, Floratam is very pervasive through the industry. It's sold as Floratam. It's also sold as other names and as components of other sod products that are mixes of different genotypes. So we have to be careful that we not only purchase sod that is not labeled Floratam, but is in fact actually not Floratam labeled as something else. So there are many different varieties of grass that we can use. Those include Citra Blue, Palmetto, Classic. Bitter Blue has been used but has some problems that I'll discuss. And there are many other varieties of turf that include St. Augustine grass and other species of turf grass that do not die from this disease and that we can use to regrass lawns. What we're currently suggesting folks consider is either Palmetto, which is an industry standard variety that has been around a long time, that does not die from lethal viral necrosis, has other positives and negatives that we'll discuss, and is an option for us to consider when replacing Floratam that's died. And Citra Blue, which is a new variety released by the University of Florida by our turfgrass team, but that is new and that has only a few 5 or 6 years of data and evaluation behind it. So we are fairly confident at this point that it doesn't die from LVN either. It has done well so far, but we're cautiously optimistic about it continuing to perform well and continuing to build confidence within the end users and within the turfgrass team to be able to fully recommend that. So we have a new grass that has done very well. We have an old established grass with strengths and weaknesses that we'll discuss that are both options to consider and that we are suggesting folks look at first, because these are grasses that we've found to be able to be purchased when it says Citra Blue or Palmetto on the product. It has been Citra Blue and Palmetto that's been received. And our turfgrass producers of Florida, the TPF folks, have licensed producers and farm members that we can go to that are very knowledgeable. And so we recommend reaching out directly to one of these sod producers and a vertically integrated installer that works with that sod producer to be sure what we're getting is one of these two varieties or a different variety that can be assured is not Floratam. And so, the problems that have arisen when third-party wholesalers have been involved, and mistakes have been made where Floratam was sold but was labeled as bitter blue in a couple of different cases that I could go through in slide 47 if we have time later. And so, caveat emptor, the buyer beware. If you use a third-party wholesaler, ask them for assurance that what you're getting is not Floratam. And if they can't provide that, we suggest reaching out to a licensed producer, vertically integrated with an installer, and purchase sod that will not die and have to be replaced the second time because it's a different genotype than Floratam. And so, there are many options available. These two that we're talking about, Citra Blue and Palmetto, have performed very well for us in different situations. So there's some questions about certified sod versus licensed sod. The new variety Citra Blue is the only long grass in Florida that's certified. There are folks pushing certified sod that don't actually mean certified from the Southern Seed Certification Association, SSCA. Certification also does not guarantee sod product purity. It's a step in the process where a purity is assessed, but then it's produced on sod farms where contamination can occur, where mixtures of grass can occur, and Floratam, as I mentioned, is very popular. It's very aggressive, and so a guarantee is difficult to come by. Palmetto and Citra Blue have been the most consistent sod products that we've evaluated genetically and also in the field in response to LVN. So what are some of the specific strengths and weaknesses for Citra Blue and Palmetto? And there are other varieties we can talk about, and I'll answer specific questions about after this as well. Let's start with Citra Blue, the UF variety. It is new, as I mentioned. There is less data and time in the field for us to base our recommendation on. And so when you go with the latest, greatest, newest thing, sometimes you get the latest, greatest, newest thing, and sometimes you find out later that there are difficulties with that grass. So far, we haven't found any deal breakers for Citra Blue, but it is new. It has much better fungal disease resistance than Palmetto or even Floratam. It has good shade tolerance. It does tend in full sun under high nitrogen to have a spongy growth habit. So it can get spongy. That's one of the complaints that we've seen. It does get chinch bugs, just like Floratam and Palmetto, and it does get sod webworms. So it's certainly not a silver bullet cure. It is a solution. It is a grass variety that is new, has some promising and good qualities. Palmetto is an established variety. Sod Solutions manages the marketing of that. It's a company that's been around a long time. It has fungal disease susceptibility. We can deal with that with fungicides, but Palmetto, if we use that, we should expect is going to require some fungicides to prevent large patch or brown patch disease, gray leaf spot, and take all root rot from killing that turf. Turf can die from a lot of different reasons. Palmetto requires fungicides to prevent fungal disease. Palmetto also has good shade tolerance. It's also susceptible to chinch bugs and sod webworms. So at UF, we have a dog in the fight. We don't recommend only that dog. We don't give a recommendation for what should be done. We try to provide the data for the options available, and of course, folks decide for themselves what to choose. These are both good options, and it depends on whether you are comfortable with going with a new grass or sticking with the tried and true established variety. We don't want to regrass with Floratam. We can use zoysia grass, bahia grass, seashore paspalum, Bermuda grass, and ryegrass has been used in the winter period when this disease comes in as a temporary fix, as a short-term overseed for lawns that have died to maintain a visual quality that's required. It's not a long-term solution, certainly. Zoysia grass has its own issues as far as management of fungal disease, as far as management inputs that are required are generally higher, so it costs more to maintain than St. Augustine grass. Bahia grass is very low maintenance, but generally provides a lesser quality lawn than a zoysia or certainly a zoysia or St. Augustine grass. Seashore paspalum is not recommended for home lawns. It has many problems that prevent it from really being a viable option. Bermuda grass can be used, but again, to maintain Bermuda grass requires higher inputs to make it look nice than St. Augustine grass, certainly. So there are many other options to consider. Those that will keep you in the same ballgame as Floratam with the same management inputs and costs would be Citra Blue or Palmetto, with the caveat that Citra Blue is new and Palmetto has fungal disease issues likely to require a fungicide app or two per year above what we have expected and seen from our Floratam. I get a lot of questions about the timing of the grass replacement. We found the disease in our community. When do we have to replace the lawns? Do we have to rip out all the grass? Do we have to do all the community areas? And the do we have to questions, when they start like that, my initial answer is you don't have to do anything. I'm here as an educator, as a resource to provide you with what I've seen occur, what's likely to occur in your situation, and then you as a community decide what your standards are, how you're going to maintain those, and what course of action you're going to take. And these strategies vary greatly by individual and by HOA, where with some going wall to wall versus others doing piecemeal exchange of Floratam as it becomes severely affected and becomes unthrifty looking. In the end, it boils down to aesthetics. Turf is a valuable and important part of our urban landscape. It is aesthetically pleasing. When it becomes not aesthetically pleasing, we all have different levels of that aesthetic that we consider unacceptable. So those are community questions. Those strategies are community specific as they're developed. I will say that so far, no strategy has halted the progression and saved neighboring Floratam lawns. We've seen folks try this wall-to-wall, tried to set up quarantine zones, et cetera. It has made its way either by aphid or mower into the new areas, slowly in some cases, more rapidly in others, to neighboring Floratam lawns. So once it's in the community, I think it's a good idea to have a long-term plan to consider what we're going to do, whether that's live with it as it becomes unsightly or replace it with a variety that does not develop this disease or something in between. No remediation effort has allowed Floratam to be used after Floratam has died. We haven't been able to remove soil, spray the soil or sanitize the soil with anything. The virus, remember, doesn't survive in the soil. It survives in turf and weeds. And so when we get this disease, we can't go back to Floratam. Even years later, Floratam put back in here has failed. When it's done accidentally or on purpose, it has not resulted in a positive outcome. So this picture again, lawns resodded with palmetto survive. They look nice when they're treated with fungicide, when they're given the proper inputs and the best management practices. They do become infected with the sugarcane mosaic virus. The virus is present here. Mosaic symptoms are very mild and are present all throughout this St. Augustine grass lawn in Pinellas County. But again, the homeowner didn't care or not bothered by this because this lawn is aesthetically pleasing, is meeting the needs of that particular homeowner and community. This is a lawn resodded with Floratam. And when it's resodded with Floratam, the disease progression becomes more severe, more rapid, and that sod, fails. So we want to avoid this because now we've invested money in new Floratam sod in the preparation. We've lost a year of turf quality, and it's a negative outcome all around. What we tell folks in the landscape maintenance business is to keep the virus out of your account. And so, how do we do that? There are some things that we can recommend that might slow progression or prevent picking up the virus on equipment, like not mowing grass when it's wet, allowing the equipment to dry off, limiting the movement of equipment from positive areas, in addition to allowing it to dry down, using sanitizers between accounts or communities and removing those clippings, things that I've talked about throughout this presentation. Sanitizers are an extra added step. And again, it's important to allow that equipment to dry. And these are things that we can use to try to slow the spread and prevent landscape maintenance folks from being blamed for spreading this. It is spread on mowers within a community. We haven't found, when they follow these steps, that these folks are introducing it into communities. So the other thing that we say for our folks, our pest control operators and our lawn maintenance folks, is if you suspect an LVM problem, get it confirmed early. We're here at UF and IFAS to help in that communication process of letting folks know this is a virus, it's a disease, it's something that has been occurring for a number of years, and now it is in your community. Don't waste fungicide or money on fungicides or other inputs when these grasses become infected with the virus. Floratam lawns are going to die. Putting the fungicide on top, even though there may be a fungal disease in addition to the viral disease, will not help the lawn overall and will not prevent it from dying. And then rumor control, there are a lot of folks that have information out there. We at IFAS are the expert contacts for you. We can vet those rumors or different statements and let you know what the data say and what the current science is on this particular issue. As far as sod producers, they're very interested in this problem. They have educated their employees. They've established protocols in many cases for decontamination of trucks that come onto their farms. They've stopped, in many cases, disposing of rip-out material anywhere near the farm. And they've considered, in some cases, limiting customer traffic into production areas. And this has worked. This is the case where we have not found any sod source as a source of the Sugarcane Mosaic virus. We've not found this virus on any sod farm. And we've been in contact with sod producers. We've looked, we've surveyed everywhere that they'll allow us to, and we haven't found that to be the case. So this question has come up many times when lawns are resodded with Floratam. It dies rapidly the next year. The logical conclusion is this sod had this virus on it and died. And in fact, we haven't found that to be the case. We've found no instances of sod contaminated with the virus at the time of installation. It can quickly become infected. So sod producers are not a source. They are aware of the problem. They're also working with Dr. Kenworthy, our turfgrass agronomist and breeding specialist, to help to identify genotypes that are present in the turfgrass products that they're selling. That's a little bit more difficult than it sounds. These grasses look very similar. And in fact, it's difficult for us to know over a 100-acre field how much of what's there is Floratam versus other varieties. Palmetto and Citrobue have been the most consistent. I'm going to pause there and hopefully open it up to some questions in the last 10 minutes. And then again, I'll be happy to stick around for another 20, 30 minutes if needed to answer any specific questions folks have. Hopefully Randy is on and can help to kind of facilitate that as we go through. And I see there has been some chat popping up here, so I will I'll kind of pull that up. Let's see, map of the infected areas. I don't know if I... So I do not have a map of the Gateway community specifically. The map that I have is available on our Rapid Turf Diagnostic Service website, and it's a statewide map with county level incidences. And essentially what that map shows is that from Vero Beach down in the coastal areas of Florida through the Keys is positive, as green on the map. And it has, again, within the last 4 or 5 years, spread into Naples, throughout Miami-Dade County, into Naples, now up into Fort Myers. Within Pinellas County, which is also green, it is spread from South St. Petersburg, which is the kind of the tip of the peninsula of Pinellas County, up through the northern areas of Largo within the Pinellas County region. Many, many hundreds of lawns are affected. It is not moved very quickly into Hillsborough County. We have a couple of accounts and samples that suggest that Hillsborough has a few positives. It has not become the issue that it has in Pinellas, certainly, and has not spread much further north. The other positives that we see, again, St. Johns County has just last fall been detected with LVN, Floratam that was dying, and we're still trying to work with that community to figure out where it came from and how widespread it is within that area. We don't have answers there for that just yet. Any other questions, either via chat or through the Teams interface here that I can answer today?
All right, can you hear this?
Yes.
Okay. My takeaway and what I've heard is that we should transition from the Floratam, if we're affected, to palmetto. My question, not knowing anything about palmetto or Floratam for that matter, are there cost or appearance difficulty? Is there something would drive you to say that the palmetto, other than it survives, is a better choice? And why did we go with Floratam to begin with?
So Floratam, that's a great question. Why is there so much Floratam, and why are we considering these two when there's lots of other options? And so the first part of that question is Floratam is a very good grass, and it's good because it's aggressive. It's resistant to many of our fungal diseases. It when it was released was resistant to chinch bugs. It's no longer, but it's very aggressive. It's something that's very successful within and persistent within the Florida urban landscape. It's easy for sod growers to grow. It's easy for maintenance folks to keep alive. And so it's been a great grass for us for 40 years. It was released in 1973. As we grow monocultures and different crops for that many years, issues come up that exclude them and become problematic. This is one of those cases where if this virus continues to spread, it will drastically impact, of course, the use of Floratam in South Florida. If it doesn't spread to North Florida, Floratam is still going to be, a grass that's widely used. The reason why we're recommending palmetto is that palmetto is licensed by the company Sod Solutions. It has some checks within that company for assurance that what's grown, sold, marketed, sold, and installed as palmetto has certain characteristics that include a finer leaf texture, a certain color, and that company has done a pretty good job of maintaining the genetic purity and the genetic integrity of that sod product. Where we've had failures of sod occur, we've went in, Dr. Kenworthy's lab has sampled genetically the turf that was there. In each case, no matter what the turf was labeled, when it died, it was Floratam. And so when we looked at the data across the many counties affected at those failures, bitter blue came up many times. Some other grasses came up. Palmetto and citra blue did not. And we think that that's because of the integrity of that sod product being palmetto, the integrity of citra blue because it's a certified and a new grass being citra blue, which has a blue-green color. It has some additional characteristics that set it apart from other grasses. Palmetto is the same with its fine texture and color. And so, the main reason that we're putting those out in front is twofold. One, they don't die like the other varieties, but two, when we've seen those two purchased and used, they have been, in fact, that genetic entity that.
Are the costs comparable between the two products, between palmetto and the Floratam?
I think that they are
available. Is it widely available?
Yes, palmetto and citra blue are both widely available. Citra blue is less available than palmetto. Palmetto, is available. There's not as many acres of it in production. I don't have a good answer for how much is there. Mark Kahn is an employee of Sod Solutions who used to work at UF. He has a good finger on the pulse of the sod production within Sod Solutions and how much might be available. I've not heard of any shortages of palmetto to this point, and believe it to be widely available. The price, I believe, is pretty similar, whether you're talking about citra blue, palmetto, or Floratam. I think Citra Blue has a slight premium because it's new and because it is licensed and patented. So I think that there are differences in price, obviously, from where you get it to who installs it. Installation costs tend to outweigh, I think, the actual sod product costs. And checking with sod suppliers, in particular going with a TPF licensed producer, would be the best way to ensure that you're getting, a fair deal as far as the price and checking on availability.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Dr. Harmon?
Yes, sir.
Jay Arthur's with Mainscape. A couple questions for you. Is there a specific time of the year that the aphid will feed on the Floratam and transfer in the SCMV?
Aphids are generally going to be more active on turf that's juvenile, turf that's actively growing, and in temperatures that are mild. And so in South Florida, we can see aphids year round. They're not, as I mentioned, particularly pervasive pests on St. Augustine grass. We see them occasionally feeding on St. Augustine grass and then moving around, but again, not particularly well or frequently. So I would say that the most likely time we're going to be in the spring through summer when we have juvenile lush growth that's attractive to the aphids to feed on, and generally mild temperatures for the aphids to thrive.
Okay, is there any research have been done on preventative applications to control the aphids?
No, we haven't done any insecticide trials for that. It would be, and we haven't because it would be very unlikely that insecticides would prevent spread of the virus into lawns. And the reason for that is that this virus is spread on the mouth parts of the aphid as it feeds. And we know this from corn and sorghum and sugarcane research. It spreads the virus very quickly, even when it lands on a turfgrass plant that has a residual of insecticide. It would be likely that aphid would still be able to feed in the short period of time that it does feed before it dies. It would spread this virus. We don't know that for sure. We haven't trialed that. It's something that we could do. We have not to this point. I do know that there are instances of lawns in the Pinellas County area that were receiving routine and regular insecticide applications for chinch bugs, for other insect pests, tropical sod weatherworms, etc., that should have been effective on aphids. And those, certainly developed the disease. The mowers spread that, whether or not it's treated with insecticide or not. And so for it to be effective, it has to be community wide, and it would be a difficult, costly thing to do and not likely to succeed.
So even if you're using an insecticide product that offers residual, right, for many months, still more than likely not going to control the aphid to a point where it won't be able to spread and transfer the SCMV to uninfected parts of the lawns.
Correct. It may control aphids to the point where you won't see an aphid problem, but we don't see aphid problems in St. Augustine grass anyway. We see this is a rare occurrence when they fall out of the air column and happen to land in St. Augustine grass. They would be able to feed enough to spread this virus, according to the data that we have, again, not from St. Augustine directly, but from other host plants like corn, sorghum, and sugarcane.
Okay. Last question. We talked quite a bit about sanitizing, right? And there's communities within Gateway that we have confirmation of that, but there's other parts of the community that don't, that maybe a landscape company is not maintaining. Would you still recommend sanitizing equipment or blowing off clippings, knowing that those parts of the communities do not have any outbreaks of SCMV?
So, I think sanitizers are an added layer of protection that can be employed. Where it makes the most sense is where we don't yet have the virus, but we know the virus is in the area. It is as effective, though, okay, when we think about practical terms, it's only going to be as effective as allowing that equipment to dry thoroughly and removing those clippings, as we might expect, be a standard practice of removing clippings before we start into a community. So yes, we can use those. In some cases, folks have insisted that they want that added layer of, if nothing else, protection there. But from a realistic and practical standpoint, we can, as long as we're allowing that equipment to dry thoroughly, removing moist clippings, we're not spreading this virus into new communities on our equipment. Can be done. I don't think it's strictly necessary. It does offer an added layer of protection and peace of mind, I guess.
Yeah, even if you have parts of a community that you're maintaining that for certain that don't have SCMV, right? You'd still recommend doing the sanitation, or removing the clippings and letting it dry would be the best practice?
Either one will work just as well. If we use the sanitizers, that'll work. If we allow the equipment to dry, that will also prevent spread into the community on that equipment. And again, where it is most important to do that is not where we already know the virus occurs, but into areas that we don't think have the virus yet. So if we have a community like Gateway in one of our HOA areas does not yet have the virus, that would be the area that I would say make sure that that equipment has been dried thoroughly. Potentially, if you want an extra peace of mind, use the sanitizer before you move equipment into that negative community and try to slow or prevent the spread of that and ensure that we're not moving that virus in on the equipment, which is, again, not a likely thing that's going to occur. It's something that is a possibility, but something that we haven't seen as a major mode of introduction because, again, of this epidemiological observation of where the virus has been introduced, where it starts, and how it spreads community to community.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? I do have a couple myself that if no one else has any questions, then I can take over. All right. I think there was one in the chat. Let me rethink this. Readdress the minimum amount of time necessary to dry out the sap. I think that was just Anton. Okay, so since the East Coast was the ground zero for the virus, has there been any hesitancy for communities to stray away from the turf that's impacted from it? And if so, do they primarily do it all, a blanket replacement, or do they piecemeal it?
Yeah, I think there are a couple examples of wall-to-wall replacement. Millions of dollars have been spent on this, dealing with this disease. I'll say that. I think the vast majority of the communities have taken an approach of piecemeal replacement of common areas and lawns as they become severely affected, and that generally includes a scouting regime. We have homeowner associations have designated representatives to go around to look for the disease in the fall when it becomes obvious, flag the number of the lawns that have the disease, and then it generally starts a clock that folks consider what's likely to occur in the next 3 years, that's going to become unsightly. And then what has been the majority of the response has been to notify that homeowner that something coming, to prepare for it, and then to consider the options for within that community standard dealing with that problem. And there's a lot of hesitancy for folks to want to spend money on lawns when they look at it today and it looks okay. There's a little spot of bronze to yellow turf. I don't want to spend thousands of dollars to replace the whole lawn, but through education and through observation of those first lawns, going through the process that we've described, looking poor, failing if Floratam is used as a replacement, has convinced folks, I think, to use that 3-year sort of lead as an opportunity to plan for replacement in those most affected areas first, common areas that follow, and then come up with a community agreement and recommendation for how that has to be dealt with. And so have been communities that have ignored it and said, we're just going to let the lawns go, and they've mowed weeds. They've looked, generally pretty poor, I think, as far as the quality of the turf, but they weren't convinced that they were ready to act yet. And I think, 2 or 3 years of that becomes obvious that something has to be done, and then lawns are replaced. But each community has its own, of course, set of standards and path that they take, and we try to give them the best information and provide what's likely to occur, what's likely to progress, and how that's going to progress, and what it's going to look like given the different options that they're considering.
And does reclaimed water impact at all the growth of this, of the turf, or impact the virus at all?
So reclaimed water does not impact the virus. The virus doesn't survive in that. Reclaimed water has a certain amount of nitrogen fertility in it. I will say that nitrogen fertility is one of the stressors. When grass receives excessive nitrogen, it can become stressed. It can become more susceptible to severe disease development, whether that's fungal disease or, in this case, viral disease. So as long as the management company who's dealing with the fertility is aware that and making the plans for fertilizer applications and rates, is aware that there's a nitrogen load within that reclaimed water, it does not have any effect on the virus spread or severity when that's taken into consideration, and IFAS recommendations are used for the timing and the rates of fertilizer applications.
Okay, and between the Citra Blue and the Palmetto, we have a lot of projects that are ongoing right now that are involved our pond bank restoration. So any sod that's affected is replaced. In your research, what's better to replace that with, the Floratam? Is it better to either do the Palmetto or the Citra Blue, or does that have any impact on the body of water next to it, or does that affect the grass at all?
Yeah, I think at this point, we're trying to stay away from making recommendations as IFAS for what specifically we should use. I've tried to present today what the strengths and the weaknesses of those two options are. I think I'm happy to discuss other options and the strengths and weaknesses there. Citra Blue is an improved variety. It's new, and so it depends on your level of comfort with taking a risk on a new turf product. We've seen a lot of turf products we introduced look okay for a year or two and then develop some issue that's resulted in them no longer being available in the 40 years that Floratam has been around, and in the 20 plus years that Palmetto has been around. So, Citra Blue is certainly a performer that looks very nice, that is resistant to fungal disease. It's new. Palmetto is a survivor. It's one that gets fungal disease, but it can be controlled. And so, it really boils down to what your comfort with the level of risk is. And I'd encourage folks, in communities to use both and explore other options as well. Maybe in community areas, they can be interplanted. They can be planted side by side. Citra Blue has a little bit of a blue or green color. It doesn't look bad planted next to Palmetto. In Tivoli Lakes, one of the communities first affected in Palm Beach County, we did just that. We put Citra Blue in right next to Palmetto, and we even put Floratam next to that, in between two houses within the community next to a lake. The grasses have grown together. They've both survived. They've received fungicide applications. The Floratam has suffered. It's died. The Citra Blue and the Palmetto have grown together, and they both look good. And so, it becomes a personal preference at that point, and something that I can't really comment on necessarily beyond what I've said about it so far. Open to any other specific questions, but I think they're both good options, and options to definitely consider and try in small scale or in areas to look at for yourself and see how they persist and how they do.
Okay. And is there any development on your end of any type of turf that could potentially not be impacted by this virus?
Yeah. So long term, we have. I'm trying to pull up a slide that sort of described that. We have a proposal in that was just funded by the UF Dean for Research to look at a potential way to prevent this virus from infecting turf to begin with. This is something that 10 years ago was not at all possible. 5 years ago was much too expensive and not even considered as a potential for a turfgrass solution. Within the last couple of years, it's become a viable option for us to explore. That's very high risk, has the potential to have a positive impact, maybe. And it's something that we're continuing to research on with a team led by Dr. Bram Dillon, Dr. Kenworthy, myself. And we're looking at a nano-encapsulated RNA particle, which is able to induce gene silencing. This is a very high-tech and molecular technique to prevent the virus from infecting Floratam or Citrus or Palmetto or anything else, so prevent Floratam from dying if it works. It's at least 5 years out from us demonstrating proof of concept. It's a long shot as far as whether it will ever have an impact on the development of disease in Florida. I don't know. It's certainly something we believe in, or we wouldn't be doing it, but it is also early stage research and basic research at that. So we are looking at every potential option and leaving no stone unturned to come up with novel solutions. This one would be a sprayable solution that would prevent the disease. But again, it's not something that's going to be available next year.
All right. Is there any other question? Last call for questions. And if not, 2 follow-up questions here in person. And then after that, I'll do the last question and then we'll let you go on your way, doctor.
All right, so I had 2 questions. So specifically regarding the reclaimed water and the installation of citrus blue. I remember one of your previous presentation, you mentioned that reclaimed water would cause the citrus blue to grow in a spongier like phase, and we're making it more difficult, I guess, to mow, or making it easier to scalp the grass and damage the grass. Is that still stands?
Yeah, that's an area that's one of the weaknesses of Citrus Blue that we're seeing pop up from time to time. Excessive nitrogen and full sun. Generally we think of full sun as being the ideal place for St. Augustine grass. It is, and Citrus Blue takes advantage of that by growing very thick mats. So it has gotten spongy in some cases, and has resulted in some scalping. We're doing research now to look at ways to deal with that when it does occur. That would include sand top dressing. That would include dethatching using vertical mowing and other techniques. That would require some specialized equipment or some additional input. It's not been something that's occurred on every lawn. And nitrogen has a cursory sort of tangential influence on that. Doesn't always occur where you have reclaimed water, you have sponginess. But we're trying to be as transparent as possible and list all of the potential issues. Sponginess has been one. Zoysia grasses are one that do the same thing. They can get very spongy when they receive excess nitrogen and full sun. Golf courses deal with that by sand top dressing, coarification, dethatching. Some of the same things may be ultimately required for Citrus Blue, or there may be horticultural inputs that we can adjust to prevent that. And one of those would be reductions in the amounts of nitrogen, potentially growth regulators. These are areas of focus of Dr. Kenworthy's research. He released the variety. He's continuing to research it and come up with ways that we can prevent that problem.
Okay, and then another question. You mentioned today a few times that a lot of this was originally introduced on lawns that it look very healthy. Does the virus tend to also spread more on lawns that are already stressed, either by lack of irrigation or overwatering, or a sod that already has brown patch fungus or large patch fungus? High traffic areas, like will you see the spread and maybe the lethal necrosis sooner than you would on a lawn that's healthier?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is yes. Where we have stresses, the symptoms of the lethal viral necrosis occur more consistently, more severely. and more at a higher incidence, meaning more of the grass within that affected area that's stressed will show the symptom and die. And that's separate from the spreading of the virus issue. The virus spreads well where we have juvenile, lush, sap-filled grass being mowed. Once the virus is established, then that disease development that occurs the following fall and winter is more greatly impacted by stress than the actual spread of the virus. So spread of the virus occurs sort of regardless, and then the higher the quality of the lawn, the more juvenile lush growth produced, the easier that is to spread the virus. The symptom development is more severe when those turf grass areas that are infected, then already infected, have the virus, fall under stress. Then they're going to be more severely affected by this viral disease, and of course they'll be more severely affected by our fungal diseases that can also occur at the same time, like gray leaf spot, large patch, take all root rot.
And so then the final question that I have, I'm going to elaborate on Randy's question. So we as a district right now are spending millions of dollars in lake bank restoration, which a part of that process does include replacing the sod on the slope of the bank. Right now, that area, we are unaware of any positive sugarcane mosaic virus, but it is a large amount of area that is being replaced with Floratam. Would it be a good idea in taking a proactive approach of going ahead and replacing that with palmetto?
Yes, I think that given that the virus is in the community, the risk in doing that is, Floratam is a very good grass, all right, and it, as compared to palmetto, requires less input as far as specifically fungicides and fungicide input. But where this virus has been introduced, as it has in the Gateway community, what I've seen so far has been that it has spread and resulted in areas becoming infected, and that spread has been complete within these areas that are affected. So it may be 5-10 years before we see it spread throughout the entire community, or it may be sooner, or maybe longer than that. I can't predict exactly the rate of progression within these communities, but I would say that regardless, when it does occur and find that Floratam that you're replacing now, it will kill it. And if you have palmetto in those areas, you're going to have a little bit extra inputs to maintain that, but that it will not die once that virus finds it. So I guess that's the best I can I can do.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Alrighty, and then just one final question. If a homeowner, a community, or a landscape organization suspects that the virus is impacting them, what resources are available to them through UF? Is there any testing available?
Yes, and so we have, put this up here, we have labs across the state that deal with plant diseases. I am in Gainesville, and I direct the Rapid Turfgrass Diagnostic Service within the Plant Diagnostic Center here in Gainesville on the main campus. That's one lab that you can use. I recommend for new introductions into a community that those samples be sent in and confirmed. The way that we do that is to test it with an ELISA. And ELISA is a biochemical test that we use to detect the virus. The slide that's up here on the screen shows the result of that test in a colorimetric assay, where we test the sample. At number 840 here was negative. It had something else, not the virus. 838 and 39 were like the positive control, turned yellow. So it's a way to confirm that what we're seeing is associated with the virus. That's the best way for a new detection in a new community to confirm that that's what we're dealing with. Once it's confirmed, there are other resources that we can use. Those include the county faculty, Stephen Brown, myself, and the way to reach out that way would be to send email or other ways, images to us for us to look at and to give you an assessment as to whether or not the symptoms are consistent with the viral diseases that we know to occur in that community. And so I think that folks, this has a very distinct look to it. Once folks become exposed to it and see it a number of times, they're able to recognize it. I'm happy to help educate those who are involved with that and how to recognize it. Stephen Brown is excellent accounting faculty in Fort Myers, and he's available as well. So you can reach out either by sending a sample to the Plant Diagnostic Center. There is a lab in Homestead, Plant Diagnostic Lab in Homestead at TREC, Tropical Research and Education Center. You can send a sample there. You can send pictures or emails to me, to your county faculty contact, and we will look at them and let you know if we think that it is or is not consistent with the virus. And again, if it's a new community, we'll recommend, after we're looking at it, go ahead and send in a sample for confirmation. And, once we get to that point where it's prevalent in the community, I think a visual estimation of disease and confirmation by image diagnostics is good enough. But for the first occurrence, we want to get that sample in and confirm it.
We appreciate everyone for joining us today for the virtual presentation. And Dr. Harmon, thank you for your insight and your time. We truly appreciate it.
You're very welcome. If you have other questions that come up after the presentation, please don't hesitate to reach out to your county faculty contact or myself at UF IFAS. Thank you again for the invitation.